Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode from the Scale Up Thursday series. My name is Rashmita, and I am the event planner for Microsoft Reactor India. I'm here today joined by our very own hosts, Vivek and Vinayak, and of course, our special guest speaker, Lakshman. But before we begin the session, I would request you all to read our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat section is open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Our speakers will answer all your questions during the session, so please feel free to drop all your questions in the chat section. But before I hand over the show to Vivek, I would request you all to scan the QR code. It's a quick way to learn about the Microsoft for Startup Founder Hub program and how Microsoft for Startup team supports startup. They provide access to great AI services, expert device, and the necessary tech to build a future proof startup. With this, thank you all once again and enjoy the show. Over to you, Vivek. Let me bring him in. Hey.
Hey Rishmita,
Hi,
good
Vivek.
evening,
How are you? Good evening.
and welcome to all our guests. I see some comments. Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to the one more show of Scale Up Thursday. Do let us know from where you're joining in, and we will know where you're joining in from, for this particular show. And I'm Vivek. By the way, I'm CTO for Microsoft for Startups, and I have amazing guest in the show today. I'm going to bring both of them in. Uh, One is Vinayak, who is my colleague. Vinayak is here, and there is Lakshman from Neverinstall is here. So quickly, Lakshman and Vinayak, please introduce yourself, and then we will, obviously ask you some questions. Lakshman, we're going to grind you, as I was talking in the
Sure.
backstage. We're going to ask you some, put you in spot, and we're going to ask you some interesting questions as well, right? So, go ahead, Lakshman. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Vivek. Evening to you as well. Hey, Vinayak. Evening. So, I'm Lakshman. I'm the founder, CEO of Neverinstall. Neverinstall is a deep tech cloud platform. It's a startup, and essentially what we are building is a platform to deliver internet computers in a browser. We started this about 3 years back, and again, still very early days. I would say maybe this year or maybe now we are finishing our 0 to 1 journey and looking forward to our 1 to 10.
Fantastic, fantastic. Obviously, we're going to ask you some important questions in the journey part, anyways. So, Vinayak, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Vivek. Good to have you, Lakshman, on the show. Hi, my name is Vinayak Hegde, and I'm the CTO in Essence at Microsoft for Startups. So I work very closely with startups and help them scale the product and tech, and that's the role I've been doing, especially startups in the Asia Pacific region. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Vinayak. So Lakshman, let's start with a very interesting question. What's your been journey been like? I see you've done two startups. One is Chutney. Uh, I used to run a show called samosachai.net with chutneys and stuff like that. I hope that is not your startup, but we're going to ask you what exactly chutney means, and then never install. So what is the story behind this?
Right. So the story, I mean, would go to like my third year of college, right? Maybe 2011. And I was one of those fortunate people that through our seniors was hearing a lot about Y Combinator, right? And my background is very middle class, right? Of course, uh, my father had left a government job to a private to start up and have his own company, right? But in my head, like a business was like very you need people, boots on ground kind of thing, right? But it was that seniors coming back from their internship from say the Bay Area and say UC Berkeley or one of these universities who told me about YC and specifically around internet companies. Right? Till then, my mind was about value creation was very different. So for the first time, I realized that technology has become a great equalizer to create value. Right? And from then I was very clear that okay, this is what I would do. But again, I had no idea about like what are the skills, etc. And my journey has been that I would put myself in the small startups or mid-stage startups and just work across domains and learn as much as possible. As part of that, after working across 3 or 4 companies, I ventured into starting up Chutney with another batchmate of mine and another third co-founder. That was effectively more from a idea that we were looking at retail in China, especially a product called Pindodo that used to do group buying. And a- and we were doing it like very top down where like what are VCs looking for from retail next, right? And we came up with this concept of chutney where initially it was group buy, but then we realized that there's a deeper problem to be solved, which is for tier 2 tier 3 the last like basically demand aggregation. And say it was closer to what today's Dunzo or rather Zepto is. Right. So that was the core idea and the concept that we had, or the initial idea was inspired by Nandini's. Nandini milk parlor. If you are from Bangalore, you would see Nandini milk parlors. And like we realized that these are organically centers where people right in that locality just come at least for the milk. Right. If this guy can just aggregate more products, right, the kind of footfall this guy gets is something which typically other retail stores don't get. Right? So that is how we started this concept of reaching out to say very local stores in tier 2, tier 3 cities where we would leverage those to aggregate demand as well as like supply sectors. So that was the core idea of Chennai.
Yeah, so I think for those who are listening in, I think we do get an international audience. So just kind of talking about a couple of
Sure.
startups mentioned. One was I think Zepto. Zepto does like instant delivery. In fact, I think the claim to fame is I think maybe delivery within 10 minutes or lower. And I think Nandini is like basically a corporation that actually supplies milk, and they have these like kiosks or booths all over Bangalore, where you can go and buy milk and milk products like maybe cheese and clarified butter, which is ghee, and a bunch of other things as well.
Yeah.
So they are like your small departmental stores, or what is known in India as kirana stores. Yeah.
So Lakshman, why the name chutney?
Again, so uh, it was more from like standing out. Actually, I don't even remember how it came, but I know why chutney stuck as opposed to every other name. It was because we were able to manage to get gochutney.com, right? That was very important for us, okay, because chutney.com was not available. But then it was also the fact that we wanted something which has a lot of organic search, right? So we can leverage that as part of our initial growth. But yeah, I mean, like, that word just resonated with all three of us back then.
Perfect. So basically, in college, you started this company called Chutney,
No, no,
and
no.
then
So this is like no, no, no. This is just 3 years back,
before
right?
never
So
install.
yeah,
Okay,
before that, I worked across several companies.
got it. So now you started Chutney, and what is the story behind never install?
Yeah, so very interesting story initial days. So the idea was, I mean, it was all about building Chutney out, but we didn't really plan about our cash flows, right? So what we did was we decided, by we, I mean me and Vivek, one of my other co-founders, that we will in parallel do engineering and product upskilling to people, right? And as part of that, we created another company and just to see that we can earn money and then use that to feed this company. right? And that's how two companies we formed it. But somewhere along that, 80% of my time was everybody's time was on chutney. But we realized that the core problem of uh, like development tool setup, right? That was always a big pain point whenever we were, say, upskilling a particular student or a candidate, and that led to a. And throughout those days, we used to discuss, right? Where is the bottleneck, right? Is it the complexity of setting up, and always there was a bottleneck of the students not having the right hardware, right, or the laptops or whatever. And we realized the problem is more about the gap between the requirements of these software tools versus the median spec of hardware in the market. And we used to discuss a lot of things around, okay, like it's been 20 years, right? Why is this the problem? Like Moore's law, does it exist or has it died? Okay, why aren't computers becoming better? And with that, okay, like I started working on this core problem, and more from a technical side as to how would we solve this problem. And over weeks and months, it just became a product in itself. Right, the very early version of Neverinstall was in fact a cloud ID, exactly similar to what today's GitHub Spaces is, but way back in 2019, right? And and then we had like now two products, right? A retail chutney startup, right, which was into very operational heavy, and we were only focusing on like basically in and around Bangalore and Chennai. And then you had this developer tool cloud ID. So that's how it started, and then we had to decide, okay, like we have to focus on these things properly. And around the time that Chetty got into Y Combinator, I had built out the tech over there, and I formally transitioned full time on Neverinstall.
Got it. Got it. So it's a interesting story, and we have been talking about never install, and I want to bring up never install slides, and we go through what is never install
Sure,
is, and there are questions in the chat is what are AI internet computers. So we will answer those questions
sure.
for the audience. So let me bring up your slide.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So this is exactly what I was mentioning just now, right? So what we did around that time is we categorized software, right? Every software that exists, and effectively it was in five buckets. One was internet to software, right? So your browsers and a couple of other software would fall under that. The other was developer tools. Third was games. Fourth was effectively productivity tools, right? It could be Slack, it could be anything which is as part of a workflow. And fifth was media, right? And we looked at top 10 softwares of all of these categories and used Wayback Machine to open their requirements page, right? Everybody, if you've seen the requirements page of say Chrome or VS Code, etc., you'll have two columns, which is minimum requirements and recommended requirements, right? And we like basically did that exercise going back 15 years and then looked at the hardware specs, right? And we realized this very unique insight that yes, Moore's law is still true, will continue to be true, but the softwares are growing at a pace that they require much more hardware than the median hardware specs. Right? So it's not that the hardware specs in the market are not getting better. It's just that the requirements of the popular software are growing at a much faster rate. Right? And that was the key insight. And then more or less, like all of us also have done this throughout our usage of computing, right? So we always do this thing which is resource rationing, right? Maybe closing a couple of applications or closing a bunch of tabs, right? And that's become part of the computing experience. With that as a core problem, what we wanted to solve is basically decouple the hardware requirements and the software computing experience. So that became a very clear problem statement for us to solve. Yeah. So
Hmm.
I spent a decent amount of time in understanding the history of computers and like what and why now, right? And we realized that only like again this over the past 3 years we are at this moment in time where you have this very amazing software called a browser, right? Which is if you have 5 billion internet users, you have 5 billion browsers, right? So compute like so number of personal computers or computers and number of browsers are more or less equal. And we realized like this is the best way to distribute the entire PC, right? And what happened is that over the last few years, specifically technologies like WebRTC, Quick, HTTP3, they started being generally available in the browsers, and they that fundamentally changed the kind of latencies that earlier were not possible, right, are today possible, right? Again, with a couple of proprietary uh, uh, changes. And the other aspect is whenever, like Kubernetes was a fundamentally game changer in orchestrating cloud resources, right? So these are two things that effectively gave us the confidence that we would be able to build this platform because the kind of challenges that we had to solve and engineering problems we had to solve are typically the things that large cloud providers do, right? So be it AWS or Azure. And but these two things became the guiding force for us. Okay, like this would allow us to like iterate and build it out. Okay, say within the next 18 or 24 months.
Yeah, so I think all of this I think goes around in fashion, right? I think you in this slide when you put like Sun Microsystems, and I saw this slide. I think I remembered like Sun used to say the network is the computer, right? And then you had
Yeah,
like client server computing, and and then obviously like there was like the mobile, the cloud. Earlier I think you had like only company issued laptops, or you used to go to the office and
yeah,
use desktops,
correct,
and when you're like you're disconnected, then you had more mobility with laptops and then mobiles, and thinner laptops and more faster laptops. So the client devices earlier were not very great, but what has I think evolved and become better is the client devices have become much one cheaper and much more powerful, right? So now I think even I see a lot of startups also figuring out what computing, right, can be done on the client, and what computing can be done on the server. So you have like this federated learning
correct.
kind of approaches you have in so because we're talking about AI, you have federated learning kind of approaches. You also have on device learning, which maybe some other players are also or startups are also trying to do. So I think that is, I think, like for me, like the biggest change. And I think the other thing, I think important thing which you pointed out I want to highlight is I think the browser itself has become like a platform on which you can standardize and do a whole bunch of stuff, right? So even the things like computer vision that and other things which you could not do very easily now have become possible because the advent of newer models in AI and bed hardware as well.
Yeah, and that these are the two things that made it clear for us that in fact, like when you mentioned Sun, okay, like we realized that what we're doing is effectively the very first computers, right? Which were you're sitting in like some lab and the actual computer is running like say 100 meters away, right? So
Hmm.
you are decoupling the 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 servers as well as like the terminal where the user is accessing that server. And that's how we started building this out. And the key was not go back to installing say VDI software or like or anything that again gets a dependency of the platform, right?
Hmm.
It was always okay, keep it browser first, okay, and that's it, or actually browser only. And that's how we started, where we don't have a desktop client or a mobile app or anything. The entire premise of the platform was to deliver PCs the way that users use web apps, right, which is on demand. And that's fundamentally not easy because within seconds people expect the PC to be ready, right?
Hmm.
How do you do it in the most say cost effective as well as fast manner that users just get it within the next couple of seconds of them visiting a website, right? So that's how, and with that, there were a bunch of engineering challenges that we had to solve. But that was the key that we wanted to build, where everything starts from a URL in a browser, and that is your gateway to your internet, to your personal computer.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, right? Continuing with a theme that you have everything accessible via browser. So I think you mentioned in the earlier startup also, you used to do in some sense demand aggregation, and I can see two themes where I think your startup is interesting from a business point of view. One is obviously, I think it's more greener because you would probably tend to use lesser energy because you have devices running for a lesser time, and also I think lesser devices need to be actually physically manufactured. That is another
Correct.
other part. And the other thing is also because you're aggregating demand in some sense, I think you have better ways of introducing efficiencies there, because once you can kind of aggregate demand like you do it in your earlier startup in a totally different business domain, to be fair enough, then I think you can actually drive the cost of running something in the cloud much less, and that is where the cloud is actually pretty good at.
Yeah, and with this approach, there were several surprises when we started to actually roll it out. So, as part of like every other startup, similar to them, 2021 August is when we did our product hunt. That was the first public beta that we did, and we were very clear that we will build in public, and because it needs to be built over, and we need to get constant feedback from our users. But over the next few months after the launch, we started getting feedback from users because they were so creative in using this platform. One of those that I remember is one of our users was using Neverinstall in their PlayStation because it has a browser.
Hmm.
Then there were a bunch of users who were using Neverinstall in their Teslas, right?
Oh, interesting.
Fundamentally, every display screen connected to the internet becomes a gateway to your browser, right?
Hmm.
And with that, we started understanding that yes, right, this approach greatly changes the way that say typical software distribution problems happen
Hmm.
versus just leveraging existing browser, because that becomes one level of abstraction and you just work with that, right? Browser becomes sort of like a sandbox with a set of protocols, and as long as your solution works for that, right, then it works for every display screen connected to the internet.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, Vivek, do you
let's
have any
let's
questions, or
no
should
no
we
let,
move to
let's
the
move on to
architecture?
the architecture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So basically, I just want to just reiterate here is basically, we need to talk about the AI internet computers, right? So there was a question. I mean, we just want to
Yeah,
answer that question though,
yeah,
from the person like, what is the AI internet computer is. So
yeah.
uh, so I just want to
I'll take
spend
that.
some
Yeah,
time on that
sure.
question though. Yeah.
Sure. So when we were, so again, this is early 2021, when we were just prototyping this, there was another insight we got, which is at the end of the day, we are the platform that is looking at these display screens on behalf of the user and presenting it to them on a browser, right? And there's only finitely many applications that are being painted on that display screen,
Hmm.
right? So, and if we are looking at these as frames, I'm effectively having several like petabyte scale kind of frames, even for like a million users, right? And we realize that there is a case to be made where I can effectively build reinforcement learning models
Hmm.
that understand, given a user clicking on a particular area, typing something, what happens, right? And at that moment, I we didn't really spend much time about in around what was happening around OpenAI, because OpenAI was still relatively not that popular, right? But that was the key idea. But we realized that okay, this is fundamentally more complex, and we already hard thing that we have started building. But in 2022 and 2023, once OpenAI API started coming up, I started going through their blogs. Right in 2016, OpenAI's first approach to build AGI was effectively to look at a screen's pixels, right, and control the mouse and keyboard to perform tasks generally. It was called Universe. This is 2016. But 2016 means this was pre-transformers, right? So
Mm.
and and that was their first approach, okay, because their understanding was like human level intelligence, right, in the context of AI has to be to control these three aspects of a computer that humans do and perform actions the way that humans do, right? And of course, after 1.5 years, they parked that and they started working on transformers and then language models, right? But we realized that this is exactly what we are capable of, and unlike them, then right, we have OpenAI, say LLMs, as a reasoning engine, right? So that is how, say, I think early last year we started coming up with this idea that how do we build intelligent agents inside the operating system itself, right? And that's how the first version of the Copilot that we built for our platform, right, we launched, and now we are working on the next iteration where it would be closer to what OpenAI's initial efforts were.
So just for audience, we will also see the demo of this. Just hold on, okay?
Yeah,
Let's go to the architecture, Lakshman. Let's move on to architecture.
sure. Yeah, so without getting into the nitty gritties, this just is a loose representation of what is happening. But so on one end, you have like every display screen, right? Big, small, doesn't really matter, right? Connected to the internet. And then across any operating system, be it Windows or Linux, we on demand create a instance, set it up, set the applications that the user wants, and then set up our own agent that takes care of looking at the display and streaming it at almost less than 100 ms latencies, right? So that's the core that's happening. But the I mean, it's not as trivial as I mentioned, because when you're streaming these packets over the internet, which is public internet or not private internet, the complexities increases manifold. But then there are other problems, right? The problems are around cost, right? So if you keep the server or the, say in this case, virtual machine running for 720 hours, right, on any cloud, right, how then it basically becomes like $100 or $200 or $300 per month. But what we wanted to build from the very beginning was a platform that is both accessible to individuals as well as business customers. Business customers, they don't really care because there is an existing VDI DaaS market, right? So price sensitivity around uh, that is already pre-established and not much. But what we fundamentally wanted to change is like how do I make all of this accessible to an individual, right? They just come and they click on a couple of buttons and it's ready. So that's where we realize that we have to solve these cost problems. So we did one thing, which is we built our entire networking stack, which does this adaptive streaming and a couple of other optimizations that consumes almost, say, 70% less egress compared to anything that is already out there. The other thing that we did was we re we reinvented what a disk should be in the case of a cloud PC. So instead of paying for disks like proper disks on cloud, what we do is that we build this file system that leverages blob storage, right? So you're not effectively paying for disks when you're not using. You are actually your entire data with that file system is stored in a blob storage, which is 90% cheaper, right? With these and couple of other things, what we effectively did is that even for business customers, earlier what they would pay to Citrix or VDI or say VMware $200 per month, with us, the overall cost of solutioning becomes $30 or $40.
Fantastic. So one of the thing which I have seen from Neverinstall is basically I've used Neverinstall, and um, its performance is amazing. It's like it's super fast when you open something on the Windows. It's pretty fast, and I've been able to work seamlessly on a browser, invoke the Visual Studio Code, and start coding, and probably just tell install, and something gets installed, and you just get started with it. So, how do you achieve that performance, Lakshman?
Yes, that was always the big thing. Over there, we followed a lot of research around cloud gaming, right? Around latencies of and we realized that absolute latencies, of course, will always exist, right? So it's perceived latencies that we have to solve for. But then there was another dimension to perceived latencies. Perceived latencies are always a function of the UI, right? And what you're doing with that particular software's UI. For example, if you are playing a strategy game, right? Even slightly higher latencies, absolute latencies, will give you same negligible perceived latencies. But if you're playing FPS games, right, higher absolute latencies will actually give you like higher perceived latencies. The same applies to say software where you're writing code, where you're writing or like viewing a video, or say uh, using Microsoft Docs, right? So what we did is we built this system again as part of that networking stack, which understands, right, and makes as and when you're working on these respective softwares, brings the latencies, or rather the absolute latencies, within those like bounds of that we measure, right? So unlike typical software, right, we have the latencies would always be optimized.
Got it. I know that's a very good analogy, like going after the gaming industry and understanding how exactly they work, and in terms of building that latency into the developer life cycle. It's very interesting. And when you say here, never install cloud, what does that mean? You have your own set of machines, or you are building it on cloud. At the back end, it's on the cloud, and whenever a user coming in and he set up something, is it completely a container workspace, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's a pretty distributed setup, but we don't own our servers. We, of course, we use providers like Azure. If it is very specific compliance related, okay, so customers can use whatever cloud provider they are on, right? So the one decision that we took on day zero was our entire stack will be cloud agnostic. By entire stack, the core infrastructure orchestration aspect of it, right? And that was specifically because, like, if I have, if my user is in a region where you don't have, say, a particular public cloud close by, right? But they have like something else close by, and my solution is coupled with that public cloud, then the absolute latencies problem will exist, right? So we built this entire stack in a way that it can be hosted and deployed and orchestrated on every cloud provider. So currently, Azure is, I think 95% of our workloads are on Azure. Uh, but for specific users in EU, we use Scaleway.
Got it. So when you mentioned Azure, so what all services you use in Azure? I mean, I just curious to know.
We use almost all of Azure services, as I mentioned, right? So we use at the core we use the blob storage, right? The file system and that entire piece is built. And the thing is that that works across any blob store or like object storage service, right? It could be Azure Blob or whatever some other cloud providers S3. That's one. Then we use Kubernetes extensively. In fact, a lot of our code goes upstream to Kubernetes. Right? Then we use app servers, we use functions, we use uh, the registry, we use VNet, we use VNets like extensively. Right? A lot of our engineering is actually on the networking side, right? We were able to quite easily set up the kind of complex network setup that we have using Azure VNets. Then we use, so like, and in terms of the types of VMs, like you name it, all types of virtual machines, right? Think of us as a, so that this is how I describe myself sometimes, right? I am the graphical user interface for cloud providers, right? So everything, right, that the customer needs. But apart from this, we also use the Azure OpenAI service.
Got it. It's perfect. So, Vinayak, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I think I just wanted to kind of Lakshman to expand on that. How do you use the Azure OpenAI service, and what kind of other AI models do you use? Obviously, I think for different parts, you use different types of models. But if you can kind of throw some light on, how you're integrating into that.
Yeah, so one of the things, and we've been working with the OpenAI APIs before the OpenAI Azure service was there. But
Hmm.
one thing that was immediate for us is that having a managed Azure OpenAI service was a lot easier and simpler, but also the SDK for Azure OpenAI service is like significantly better than the official OpenAI SDK. Like that was a big difference in our developer experience.
Hmm.
So we use so again, we deploy the same OpenAI service on Azure. Apart from that, there's fine-tuned models on GPT 3.5. The core models would be with GPT-4 Vision as well as GPT-4 Turbo. Other than that, there are a couple of other models which we built in using open source, which are again, those are also deployed on Azure.
So do you
So,
use the
so
like the
Lakshman,
do you use the like the
sorry to interrupt.
catalog also, the model catalog also? Uh,
Yes,
Azure Open Studio. Okay, cool.
yeah.
Sorry,
So
Vivek,
the
go
model
on.
catalog is the thing that we just go, and that's the quickest way for us to like experiment and do a bunch of testing. Right? So it makes
Okay.
things easier.
So you mentioned that you have done fine tuning, right? What are the things? Why do you think you wanted to do a fine tuning? Uh, just curious to understand what are the areas why you felt that you need to fine tune it.
Yeah. So the OpenAI, like specifically GPT-4, right? Even today, right? It's been almost getting to be close to a year. It's still the best model in the world, but it's at the end of the day a gentle model, right? And it's iteratively getting better. But the way that we wanted the responses, depending on the context, we needed standardization, right? Also, we all like, for example, if we are asking the copilot to generate commands for the terminal, right? I don't want OpenAI to generate the rest of the things that it typically generates, right? Go do this, okay? Because it's happening inside the terminal in my case, right?
Yeah.
So we have to do the fine tuning so that directionally it always pipes out the kind of things that we have fine tuned it for. Right? I'll actually show you this in the next couple of minutes when we get into demos. Right? So that's where the fine tuning is required.
Perfect, perfect. Let's move on then. Let's move and see some demos as well.
Sure. Uh,
Yeah, I think there is a lot of curiosity because you talked about it such a lot in terms of the problem domain, in terms of the solutions,
I
in terms of the architecture. So everyone is curious, like
sure.
how does it actually look? Yeah.
Yeah. So so this is what I covered. Right. In fact, like
Just,
people watching should go check out the 2016 blog post by OpenAI. It's called the Universe. In fact, Vivek and Vinayak, if you've recently followed this product launch of these guys, Rabbit OS, sorry,
Rabbit, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. The
right?
device, yeah.
This is exactly what they are also working on, right? So keep the device part. Okay, that's just a display screen, even in their case. But the key invention or rather innovation is the Rabbit OS, which is very similar to Universe or what we are doing, right? Where it is, and they also published a paper. Okay, again, people who are interested in this should go check that out. And I feel like this is where like the next big jump in AI agents would come in, right? Where these are just sitting in the user's devices. Yeah. So demos, let me just prepare them.
so I have LinkedIn comments which is coming in like, this is awesome. We want to see.
Sorry. Yeah.
I have LinkedIn comment which is coming in while we do this. This is awesome. We want to see. We want to see the demo. So I'm getting these comments in LinkedIn.
Yeah. So I can you see the screen?
Oh, and you want me to bring up the new screen? Yeah, just a
Yeah.
second. Got it.
Yeah, so I have a space already running, but before I use that, one of the things that Vivek mentioned, right, how easy and fast a new space creation is. So I'll just give you a walkthrough of that. I'll just pause this for now. Say, and this is how the entire journey starts. And we call it spaces because as part of a user's workflow, this is where they select the tools as part of their workflow, right? So in my case, it would be Chrome, VS Code, say NeoVim. But effectively, every application can be installed even after the space is created. This is just helping the bootstrap. After that, you can select the operating system. My choice is Linux. Again, we offer Neverinstall Cloud and CloudLink. So CloudLink allows our users and customers to connect their cloud providers, be it Azure, AWS, or OneShare, or a couple of others. I'll just use this. Then, depending on where you are, okay, we have our clusters across the world, right? So all of this, most of the servers are on Azure, some are on Scaleway. So Central India, you click on Create Space. It barely takes 10 to 15 seconds for a new space to be created. So what's happening is a new container is being spawned, the display screen as well as all the tooling is being installed one by one by one. Yeah, so it's almost ready. And this is your space. The apps are getting installed. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this is how the space starts. Okay. Every time Linux spaces will not take more than 10-15 seconds. Right. And this is basically something even um, say VMware, etc. Or like even cloud PCs, guys. Okay. Nobody has come to this point that they can give SLAs of 10 seconds. Right. A complete new initiation and bootstrapping of the container with all the setup with the connection established. And connection establishment is also zero trust in that sense. So we don't basically we don't care where the user is. Right? So there are multiple protocols that are used to punch and basically get the stream up and running. Yeah. So I just wanted to show this for a while, but I'd like to
Yeah.
get
So,
into.
so as you demo, I think one of the questions I think a lot of people will have is, can you install any custom app on this? And if so, what is the process?
Yeah, so good that people ask that. Okay, so say you want to install. Yeah, so we have this. Let me just close this first. Yeah, so we have a shortcut called /NI, right? You can use that, or you can go to the dock and you can use the same setup that we have to select any additional app that you want. You can use that, or if something is not there, you can ask the AI Copilot to actually do it for you, right? So
Okay.
uh, you just tell me the kind of let's just do say something as basic as sorry, uh, let's do uh, install. Okay, Postman
Say
is there.
yeah,
Sorry.
VLC, maybe video LAN player, VLC.
Yeah, yeah. So let's do install VLC. Right. So yeah. So after this, that's it.
Okay. So the command line actually expands this and then figures out what command to run and then goes
Yeah,
ahead and installs.
yeah. Or you can also use the doc that we have. Okay, and from here, okay, I'll also show you. Say
Can you use
you
private
want.
repos on this? I'm guessing
Yeah.
you can use private repos
Yeah,
also.
you just need
So
to sign
write
in. Yeah.
a Python file to start a HTTP server at 3000. Right. And what will happen is the code. Okay, the code generation is over here, but what you can do is you can directly copy paste at cursor, right? So you can do that and it comes over here, right? But again, this is sometimes not really that user friendly. So what we can do is while you are over here, any place where you can type, you can do /NI and you can actually ask it to continue, like or basically give a prompt and it will generate code in that particular piece of file, right? So effectively, every text area where humans would typically type, the agent can do inline text generation with the context of the window and the application.
So Lakshman, just can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So is it better?
Yeah.
I'll give you one more example. Say Chrome. Do this. Let's do paste.
So this is where it is very interesting for me. Why I am also using this is because
Yeah.
it's super
So
fast. It's super fast. Like it's like just you know, just type in and you're just able to get those things.
write a summary about, okay, write a poem about dogs, right? This is in some website in some Chrome, right? But what we did, because we are actually inside the OS, we built this capability of that context engine as well as inline generation right wherever you are, right? If you are writing an email, okay, or if you are say in Gmail, okay, this works. If you're on Slack or if you're on Android Studio, Terminal, VS Code, doesn't really matter, right? It and with that, what we're building is this context engine that is always keeping track of what's happening.
Perfect. So people who are watching this show, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat so that we can ask Lakshman.
Vinayak, Vivek,
Lakshman, go ahead. Go ahead.
you guys want any other like think of like
So
some other.
so as of today, how many apps which I can install directly from your portal? Like, um, say for example, I pick a some size box, and how many apps I can install in that size? I mean, it is auto expansion. It goes into auto expansion, auto upgrade, or I need to upgrade and then I'll be let in
Yeah,
to install stuff.
yeah. No, no. So once the space is created, right, you are free to install as many apps, do whatever you want. And as I mentioned, right, so there is elastic storage. So as you are hitting the storage limits that we provision for you, we inform you. And after that, if you upgrade, right, so the entire disk effectively gets upgraded.
Okay, there is a question at
Sure.
the in the chat, which is like from Ashutosh, which is like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
how
it's
can we use
means
it?
that they should use this now, right? Like, look at the snappiness of it. So how does someone actually go and start using this?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've
it
actually shared the link. Just Lakshman, just sorry to cut you.
sure.
I've shared the link in the in the comment, and it is also here. But Lakshman, if you can show the initial page, web page of any landing
Yeah,
page, and how people can get started with this, would be really good. Uh,
yeah, uh,
so this is the landing page. Like you, this is what you see when
yeah.
you land on the link which we have shared in the chat.
Yeah, so you can get started. So currently, we don't have a free service, but the subscription, monthly subscription, we've seen to it that it's very close to what typical utility bills are. So you have something uh, like just 1,200 rupees per month, and after that, you would be allowed to create, say, Windows spaces or Linux spaces, right? Depending on what you want. And once you sign in and purchase a subscription, that is where your journey starts, which is here. You select the applications that you want, say Chrome, VS Code. Right? You can also select the Windows or Linux operating systems. In case of Windows, we actually also go one step ahead, and every Windows instance that we are giving to our users has a GPU, right? Because what we realize is that there's a lot more design or designer personas for that particular option, and you need a GPU. So, and again, very rarely do you do you get like a good allocation of GPUs on cloud, but there I have to thank Azure. Azure has uh, quite like sufficient amount of and different types of GPUs available. Right. So in that case, you just select Windows and start from whichever region you want to create your space.
So can you show the pricing as well? Like what is
So
the pricing?
yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so you have a monthly. So basically, the difference between starter and premium, right? For 12.99 was sorry 11.99 versus 17.99 is the specs, right? So starter is half the specs of what premium gets. So for 11.99, what we are basically giving is a 4-core CPU, 14 gigs of memory, and 40 gigs of storage if it's Windows, or if it's a Linux space, 3 cores of CPU, 6 gigs of memory, and again 40 GB of storage. In the case of premium, it's just double the resources: 8 CPU, 28 gigs, 80 GB, including the GPU, which is 2 times of this, and six cores and 12 GB memory for premium. In the case of Linux, apart from that, the AI is not charged separately. It's already part of the platform, and you're not separately paying for the component. And it is like partly it is powered by the latest GPT-4 Turbo. So even in that case, right, your you can save on your Chat GPT subscription if you. I do that.
This is this is actually a very interesting thing, because I, as I told you, right, it's pretty fast. You know, when I'm using it, couple of things which I don't install on my laptop. I want to just go there and I play around with some of the things. That's where Neverinstall is actually helping me. And there is a question from Ishan.
I think
Uh,
a lot of people
is
will
like,
ask. Yeah, a lot of people will ask. Can it be like always? Will it be like always running? That will be one question. I think that comes to mind. And the other question is, can we play games on it? So I think the first question I think somebody has already asked, right? Is it can I like connect to it from anywhere? Like you said, like, and maybe I start using it on my desktop, and then I continue the session maybe on my phone, and then maybe I continue the session on my Tesla or whatever I have, right? So uh, can you do that?
Yeah.
Like,
So going backwards, yes, right. So the last question, it doesn't matter which device you are accessing it from, right? Because at the end of the day, your state of the PC is stored remotely, right? So you can
yeah,
start from your mobile, and then after some time use the same space on your PC, right? So the state is always preserved. And in the case of uh, games, right? We don't actively say that you technically you can some users are playing, right? But we are not optimizing for the gaming latencies across the board. I'll give you an example. I use Neverinstall to play Age of Mythology on the Windows version, right? So like on my actual laptop, I use Linux, and over there I can't game, but I use Windows on install Steam, and actually play Age of Mythology seamlessly. But that's a strategy game. I
yeah. So I think maybe like first person shooters or anything that is like maybe fast moving, you might. I mean, it might still be okay, and I'll let you comment on that. But I think maybe anything that is like maybe statics or like maybe simple games where there isn't a lot of graphics, you can still uh, probably use it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I'll just give one update over there. We are working with a gaming company, right? So specifically where they leverage some of this tech, and over there we are also learning, right? So maybe in like a quarter we might have a better, and even in that case, we don't expect that we ourselves would be say promoting Neverinstall for a gaming use case over some other use case. No, we see ourselves as a platform, right? We see others build on top of us, right? So maybe in a quarter, we'll have like some more data around the gaming experience because of one of our customers with who's that we are working with.
Cool.
perfect. There is already a question on that from a
Sure.
gaming purpose. But again, can they use it for machine learning?
Yes,
So this
yes,
is a
yes, yes.
GPUs which people don't have access to, and you're giving access to them to basically learn machine learning using GPUs here.
Yeah, for most like normal learning experiences for ML, it should be completely fine. And if there's very specific requirements, so in our pricing page there's the contact us. We do this for a bunch of our customers, which is based on the specs that they need. Right, the entire stack is very, say, elastic and extendable. Right, so if required, more GPU, more memory. Right, so all of those combinations are available.
Got it.
It's just that, like,
Perfect.
don't ask us for H100s. We we don't have H100s. Nobody has H100s.
That we will also ask you. Like, do you have H100? Jokes
It,
apart. Uh,
it's like more valuable than gold these days. H100s.
Perfect. So, any questions from the community? Just post it in the chat. We still have 5 more minutes. We can wait for 5 more minutes and answer all your questions. But it's a great tool, because I've been using it, and one of the thing which, and after using it for a day, the first thing I messaged to Lakshman was like, I mean, it's super fast. Like, how do you achieve that part? Like, it's like I've never seen a computer so fast, right? So like, not a personal computer. Obviously, we have used powerful machines before, But
Right.
for doing any of these personal related stuff, not seen such a fast usage. So anybody who wants to go and try it out, and it's okay to pay 1,000 rupees per month for this. It's just like having two coffees in the Starbucks. It's okay, and you get to learn a lot of things. You get to do a lot of things there, right? So that's the interesting part of it.
Yeah, I
So
think
there is
people,
a command.
yeah,
There's
people
a comment,
pay that.
Lakshman, for you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ashutosh.
yeah, I think people pay a lot, a lot more sometimes for hosting and their website. I think this is like a much cheaper option in that sense, right? Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
was the
one question
other
I had,
problem.
right? Like coming from the Unix world, right? Like I'm trying to recollect the name of the command, right? Where you actually keep stuff running and then you kind of disconnect the terminal, virtual terminal, and then you can log into the same session from somewhere else and you have the history and everything. Trying to recollect the name. Um,
Uh, yeah, yeah.
Same.
No, wait, no. It is
It's
session.
called set or
No. It's
it's
something
there.
S. Okay, let's just
Yeah,
ask AI. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Let's ask AI.
what was it? Okay, Linux command for
yeah.
that keeps the
I'm also trying
Linux
to
command
remember
for
his name.
connecting and disconnecting sessions. Like you
for
can run a command in the background and it will keep running and you can connect to the session.
This is a
sessions
question to community also.
while running.
Yeah,
Like,
like
what
if
does
you're
it say?
watching this show, let us know.
Screen. Yeah, yeah,
Screen.
Screen,
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
screen, yes.
yeah.
Screen, that is what I was looking for.
But yeah, I was also like S.
Let's say kuch hai, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is screen. So I was like thinking, can I use this as a real world screen, right? Like, I mean, I can
yeah,
keep something running and then it keeps on running and then I do my commute, I go to office and whatever I've been running is now like, hey, running, right? Maybe a data processing job or whatever. Like it could be something small, but it keeps on running in the background. Can I use it like that, like a screen, but like obviously with a visual interface and maybe AI built in?
yeah. So in fact, like that's the next. That's exactly the next iteration. So we are calling it takeover, right? So the agent will take over from you, right?
Okay.
And it will continue doing whatever needs to be done, right? Of course, it's human in middle, but after you give it instructions, but it'll keep running and it'll keep doing whatever needs to be done. So we were calling it the takeover. So the copilot will literally take over you while you go do something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I want to like say crawl or I'm downloading something, and I know maybe I'm downloading something and which I want to install. I might give it a command to maybe install a whole bunch of stuff or do an update. So I'll run that and basically let's say I'm going to disconnect the session and maybe it takes me half an hour to go to do the commute. So I go back and when I'm logged in, I think the install is complete. I mean, very simple example or data processing something. That's something that can be done, doesn't require active user input but can run in the background, which is why I was thinking, like what is like a good paradigm, and then that's why I was looking at thinking about screen.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly. So like things would be what you mentioned, or say when you are compiling something and you go away while it's getting compiled. So what will happen is that in this case, depending if it errors out, right, the AI will go ahead and start debugging the error, right? So by the time you come, right, it will have done the immediate steps that you typically would have done. You don't need to again start from that place because you were not looking at that screen, right? So it's completely fine. Move away from the screen. The AI will start looking at the screen.
Got it. So Lakshman, these are developer specific tools like the Slack, the Postman, all those Visual Studio Code and other things.
Right.
Are you also looking at tools which is specifically outside of developers, like probably somebody who is designing something, graphic designers, or probably they might be using
Yeah.
it for different. Yeah. So is there any support for those kind of tools as well?
Yeah. So in fact, so over here, so be it Canva, actually Figma is in productivity, right? But by design, every piece of software that typically can be installed on Windows or Linux, right, be it design or whatever, actually works. So a lot of our, in fact, so you would see Windows being the choice of OS for the designer persona, right? So we have users who are doing VFX stuff on our Windows version, or say even game development is happening, right? And all of these are like typically workflows that require a lot more, like basically hard, the software is very hardware intensive, right? And they use Neverinstall for all of that workflow.
Got it. So basically, just to summarize for the audience, this whole thing, whatever you are saying on never install, there are a bunch of tools, and you can choose never install cloud or your own cloud, and log in, and you have all these tools already available for you, and start using it for your development or any purpose, for learning purpose, for machine learning purpose as well, and some bit of gaming if you want to do. But you can, by the way, but you can do whatever you want in terms of having that space for you, right? And yeah, you go about it. And there's this, we'll take this last question, Lakshman,
Sure.
before we go. There is one question from Ishan. He says he's running a live app on an IP for the public. Can there be some access for the public as well to make some actions, or it is just me who controls it?
I'm not sure about like the live app, but
Say for example, let me explain this. Basically, I'm running an application here on. So I'm just running an application. I made it public or something. You know, on an
sure.
IP. Can people access that through
Y-
IP address?
Yeah, yeah. So you have that option. So where uh, I think it's port. So you can open those specific ports, and with a fully qualified domain along with HTTPS, we would do the proxying and serve it. Apart from that, what you can also do is you can invite others to collaborate on the space, right? So you can give controls to them as well, right? So
Got it.
they don't really need to be the users to actually create the space, but you can invite them.
Got it. This is interesting. So Ishan, you should definitely go back and try. Okay, and let us know how was it. Cool. I think we are just over time. But this was a great demo. This was amazing to chat with you, Lakshman. Thank you for being on the show and giving us a walkthrough of what you have built. It's an amazing product, and I've been using it for various things. And obviously, after this show, some of them will try it out and give us feedback as well. And thank you for using Azure as well. You know, you've been using all of these services in Azure, which is great to see that. Thank you for being on show again. Thank you, Vinayak, for being here, and
Yeah.
thanks, Rashmita, for hosting us.
Yeah, thanks Vivek. Thanks Vinayak. I'd like to give a big shout out to Microsoft Founders Hub. It's been like about almost close to 2 years of this relationship, and see, even prior to that, having experience with other cloud providers, I mean, the kind of support that Microsoft Founders Hub I've experienced, like, it was tough for me to be comfortable with Azure because I was coming to Azure like after 10 years or like, but amazing experience. Forget about the platform, but just the kind of efforts that you guys and all the different teams that you put in for the startups, right? Very rarely have I seen somebody as big as Microsoft going above and beyond for such small companies, right? So very grateful for that. Grateful for this opportunity as well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Lakshman.
Thanks,
Thank you very much
thanks,
for the
Lakshman, for
shootout
the
as well.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
all. Thank you all for joining in.
Thanks,
Just
Rashmita.
keep watching this. We will, anyways, come back with the next set of episodes as well. We have one more episode coming in on 15th February. do join us. That is a very interesting product, one page. So we'll talk about it more. Thank you, Lakshman. Thank you, Vinayak. Thank you, Rashmita.
Thanks, guys.
Hi everyone.